Hi, I'm Max Porterfield, President and CEO of Callinex Mines, where we're expanding some high-grade copper-rich discoveries outside of Flin Flon, Manitoba, and have a much deeper portfolio across established mining jurisdictions in Canada.
Max, thanks for the introduction. Great to meet you, finally in person.
Yeah, nice to see you.
We've done several of these online interviews, but here we are at the PDAC. We're blessed with the weather. It's warm, finally. For a PDAC, I've experienced kind of minus 29 centigrade. We're kind of 2 or 3 days in. It's been pretty busy. You've had a whole bunch of meetings today. We've had a few late nights, a few early nights. How are you feeling in terms of both your kind of physical resilience to the kind of the onslaught of PDAC and also how the meeting is going?
Well, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling excited. Relative to how past PDACs, I think I've learned to manage them much better than younger in my career. So, health is very important to maintain physically and mentally, particularly in this. And it's great to be in front of people. I think that's really when you connect with people, and a lot of things can happen very, very quickly. So, certainly the meetings have been very valuable, and I think that they open up a lot of doors for us and for them, of course, on the other side of that.
People often ask me, why do I come to PDAC? And you can only get so many meetings in, but the amount of chance interactions I get when I'm walking between meetings or on the floor, it's just extraordinary how many of these unplannable, unmanageable, unexpected bits of opportunity and chance. They're so valuable, aren't they?
Yes. No, I mean, I've had some of the biggest opportunities, and even investors have come by a booth, right?
Yeah.
Even earlier on, I remember the earliest conference I did was in Vancouver, and that's ultimately someone from Resource Capital Funds walks by, and from that, stopping by that booth led to them becoming a long-term shareholder of the company. So from business deals, investors, it's, face-to-face is very important.
And actually, it's quite good value. I mean, a booth here is only a few $1,000, and relative to some of the other conferences, is in terms of bang for buck, I think it's one of the better conferences to go to.
Yeah, I mean, I think anywhere where you have a large number of people gathering is opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And there's a ton of people here for this conference, and I think from their side, it's really about volume.
The mood that I've been picking up is pretty beaten up. Everyone's share prices, well, not everyone's, but a lot of share prices are down. People's PA portfolios have been suffering. But I also detect there's a kind of a few people are feeling that the kind of markets are going to change. Obviously, the gold price has popped. Mm-hmm. It feels as if it's kind of beaten up, but with kind of hope and quite a bit of excitement. People looking for the turn.
Yeah, no, I mean, at the end of the day, I think your mindset you make for yourself. You can make yourself feel good, and you can make yourself feel sick, right?
Yes.
It's just about changing your mind. And so I've been on this volatility. There's also need to be part of the expectation. So anytime that we've ever been beat up, I've always used it as a huge opportunity and saw it as a huge opportunity. And oftentimes when you in a moment that seems very, very negative, it only feels negative in that very moment. And oftentimes when you look back at that situation that you're in, you realize it sets you up for the biggest opportunity ever. When Callinex got oversold off during the, when zinc prices came off the U.S.-Chinese trade war, and we were a zinc-dominant company at the time, I was down on myself. But then I woke up and saw this is actually the biggest opportunity ever for me to build a position to make the comeback. And, that's what we've done. And so again, a down draw, there's been another opportunity. So it's all about a matter of perspective. And when you see the silver lining on the good times and the bad times, you'll be able to level out those emotions a bit. But I definitely think we're turning. I think gold prices, needed to break out, stabilize above $2,000 an ounce. Yeah. And I think we're going to have a significant move going forward. And I think we're going to get some help in the not too distant future from the U.S. Fed. It is a presidential election cycle. And so there's a long-term pattern that you want to...
So you expect to see the Fed to do what?
I see it at some point this year, you're going to get a rate cut of some sort. I mean, they're going to want to goose the market going into the presidential election. This is a very established cycle.
Yeah.
And politicians do what politicians need to do.
Okay, well, let's just look at Callinex specifically, kind of three things I'm kind of interested. One is cash and funding for the year. The other is shareholders and the kind of the register, and then we'll look at the projects as well. But perhaps could you start with cash?
Yeah, so in terms of our cash position, we have no debt on the balance sheet. We've got about 6-month runway right now.
Yeah.
And so, at some point, inevitably, we're a company that doesn't generate revenues, just like every exploration company. We'll recapitalize. There's ways to do that. We've done it very successfully in the past.
Yeah.
So just because we're down in this moment doesn't mean that's not going to change in the very near future. So in terms of cash, that's where we're at. And,
that leads straight on there really to the kind of shareholder register in terms of, kind of the support you've got, the relationships you've got within that shareholder base.
Yeah, so in terms of the shareholder registry, we've got a strong registry. In terms of our last financing was supported by 1832 Asset Management. They were actually in Q4 open market buyer of the stock. They have a position last filing I saw was over 1 million shares.
Yep.
And beyond that, we have Altius Resource Capital Funds, a very long-term shareholder of the company, McKinsey Investments. Myself, I own just under 6% of the company, and I've consistently built that. And, you got to have skin in the game as management. You got to believe in your asset, and that's how you have big scores in this business. It's not providing your options. I mean, options can build that, but you need to build that position. And that's where you create, family office money.
Intergenerational wealth.
Exactly. Well, you got to make sure that the generations, they make sure they maintain that. But that's, I'll try to do some of that, but that's their responsibility ultimately.
Good. And in the preamble, before we press the record button, we were talking about kind of visions and kind of the long-term view that one has for a company. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the asset base that you're kind of working on. And I know that I've been into this in detail in before, but, it's such a nice opportunity to have you in person. So I'd love to hear your kind of view on what you're trying to do with the Callinex asset base.
Yeah, so it's actually interesting because we're actually approaching very, very quickly my 10-year anniversary here.
Okay.
At the company. And it's really hard to imagine, but Callinex was actually originally a graphite asset when I took over the company. And our flagship project, Pine Bay, was kind of hidden within that portfolio. And that just kind of goes to show that, projects that are quality can get lost, and so you can find them again and find to create value out of them. And beyond that, if you look back when we focused on the base metal space, it was a very unpopular time. It's $2 copper, and you're talking, we're going to go look for some deeper deposits out in the Flin Flon districts. Well, the appetite wasn't there. The appetite in investor community often is when the commodity is already run. And you can go look back on that. I sold and stated I like copper long term. We liked zinc in the medium term, and executed on that when we weren't having initial success at Pine Bay. Zinc prices came off, and it was a huge opportunity to diversify the portfolio, but it was a keen focus on, as we constructed and built the business, on assets and proximity to infrastructure. That infrastructure is obviously put there because of the geologic pedigree, but that's going to compress your upfront capital costs. As a guy that's coming from outside of the industry, I'm not an engineer by background or a geologist, I thought it completely baffling the amount of hurdles people put in front of themselves by where they're even looking.
And not just capital it compresses,
but
it also compresses timelines as well.
Yeah, it significantly compresses timelines, particularly in an instance where you have a community that was built on mining, and that mining is, depleted, and there is no mine that's been kind of discovered in the pipeline to, fulfill those needs of that community. And that was always the business opportunity in Flin Flon, is that if you walked in, you could have said, oh, well, the 777 mine will be extended. And not everything is always extended. There's a finite life to these deposits. And when you realize that and see the fact that that opportunity is not being seized, that was the real opportunity for us. And it took, and a lot of Friedland's biggest discoveries, they don't take 1-2 years. It's 6-7 years in the making.
And the rest.
Yeah, and that's really the case at Pine Bay. We diversified into Eastern Canada, obviously did very well in growing that asset. The metals came out of our favor severely. But through that, we came back with a renewed approach to exploration. And it's really about thinking outside the box and trying new things that haven't been tried before in that way. because you don't know the outcome you're going to have until you try something new. And that's what led to the first discovery, Rainbow, in 2020. And then we had another discovery at Alchemist in 2022, and now Descendant in 2023. And Descendant, in many ways, it's got the name for different reasons, but we are descendants of all the explorers to ever explore that property. And exploration on this property goes back to 1911. And uniquely, we're a spin out of a company called Callinex Mines that later became a royalty company. It was actually acquired by Altius. And Callinex Mines sank a shaft right over there in 1929.
In the cabin?
Descendant.
The cabin?
Yeah.
The cabin deposit?
By cabin over Baker Patton, a couple hundred meters away.
Yeah.
And so you had exploration company after exploration company literally going over a century.
Yeah.
All coming to the same spot. And, it's about perseverance, never giving up in the way I look at it, and also continuing to learn and always trying new things. And most importantly, as an exploration company, you have to take risk. And oftentimes it's in the hole that no one thinks is going to hit is the one that hit, and that's definitely been the case for us. And usually we hit on the end of the campaigns. So I don't know how to change that part of it because we can save some money doing that, but we're quite excited about this discovery and the potential it holds. I mean, this is an area where the last two operators were Placidome and Inmet, and they had 30 and 20 million ton exploration targets based upon the geology.
Because as I read from your news releases, in fact, the last time we spoke, kind of Descendants have got a kind of an alteration footprint in the mill rock, isn't that right?
So the mill rock's at the base of the growth fault corridor,
yeah.
But the alteration package that you see at where Descendants sits is what's brought everybody there for over a century. It spans at least 700 by 1,100 meters, and kind of give you an idea of size. Rainbow's alteration package is about 1/10 of the alteration package you see at Descendant. And Rainbow was a resource we put at 4.7 million tons, open at depth. And so, again, we've got high expectations for what's to come at Descendant. But again, it's based upon the geology, this geochemical support and geophysical support that all kind of goes into that.
And your Descendant, you're doing some quite deep drilling with wedges, is that right? Kind of daughter holes?
Yeah, so that's on any deeper system that we'll be drilling on. We'll set parent holes and wedge off of that. And, oftentimes when you say deep, people think expensive. But that's not really taking things into complete context, right? I would say wedge holes will cost you more depending on how many wedges you need to set within that hole. But you're still, even if you're on the most expensive side of that, you're 2/3 the cost of exploring remote in the Yukon, right? And a lot of our peers, right? So, again, context is everything. And aside from upfront capital costs and timelines, your exploration costs are compressed when you're exploring a jurisdiction. Because there's no helicopter. We drive out there, and then everyone, when they're done working, they drive 25 minutes back to Flin Flon, where we have 2 homes that we pay for cash. Yeah. And that's where everyone stays. And so that's really how you can spread your exploration dollar further and give yourself more shots. Because at the end of the day, to make a discovery, you need to have the ability to drill the hole and to take the risk. And oftentimes when you look at the statistical odds, it's 1 in 4,000. I was just chatting with some investors. We hit the first discovery on Rainbow, 37 holes in. Now within that, we did a couple other holes and did some follow-up work. So I would say it's really within the first 25 holes that we hit on Rainbow. And then from Rainbow to Alchemist is about another 6-7 holes. And then to hit the Descendant was another 6 holes.
Yeah.
Which is quite effective. And that goes back to really now understanding the system that we're in and where to go next from an exploration standpoint, and really then taking that risk to validate your exploration thesis.
And you've just put out a news release about some geophysical surveys. Could you just come and tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, so if you look at Flin Flon as a whole, the original Flin Flon ore body was an outcropping. That was a 60 million tonner. It was a giant. And then after that, really the camp blossomed with the creation or the invention of electromagnetics, geophysics, as a tool set. And of course, that had its own infancy and technology. And then you had the airborne surveys, and you had the surface surveys, and then eventually in the 90s, you had the borehole, downhole EM surveys. But when you looked at Flin Flon as a whole, it was a very, very much electromagnetic focused town or district. And you go to Bathurst. Bathurst wasn't all that dissimilar in terms of, one or two tools that were used. And it's kind of like, if it's not broken, there's nothing to fix.
Yeah, this is how you discover. This is how you explore. This is the tool that works, and this is what everybody should do.
Yeah. So we tried that. That was the first approach and first pass was relying on surface pulse to EM, and then doing, that was the first pass, we started doing stratigraphic drilling and then using borehole EM to vector.
Yeah.
Right? And the real success came when we completely threw the model out and said, let's try something new. And that's in 2018 when we brought IP, right? Because you look at geophysics, electromagnetics is going to look for conductive sources. Obviously, chalcopyrite or copper is conductive. That's why people use it and have some affinity for needing it. And so there's other rock property testing. So we did physical rock property testing on all the different rock units to really get a model of what we're looking for and what we weren't looking for. And then we did IP, which provides you chargeability and resistivity. And a resistivity low would be your target when you're looking for the deposits that we're looking for. And that led us to a tremendous amount of success. That led us to Rainbow. We're now merging with target area Odin. It's further along that kind of daisy chain there. And so what we brought in is magnetotellurics, and MT is more commonly easier acronym for it. And MT, you could say it's just like any other geophysical tool set, it's a black box or what have you. And so we brought an MT in, and MT looks for the same rock property in terms of resistivity.
Right.
And so we've just done our first kind of test survey, because Zong that develops the MT survey out of Reno, in conjunction with Abitibi, which is the contractor doing the surveys for us, they had never done actually a survey over a lake. So it's a unique scenario where there's obviously a lot of lakes in Manitoba. Those are not going away. And then we also have the power line. We have a huge hydroelectric power line over the property. So that was a success. We actually just announced that.
So they did a test survey to see if they could process out the power line and see through the lake.
Yeah. And so the power line is an issue for a Rainbow deposit because how close it is to it, but the Pine Bay deposit is a little bit further away. And so they were able to model that out, and the results were quite compelling. Because the key things that we want to model are going to be obviously your resistivity low from an accumulation of sulfides or your deposit. And then you also want to map your structure, which is your mineralized horizon. And in Descendants case, the Descendants have been discovered at depth in an area where you're coming into a full limb. It was an interpretation based upon the geology and the drilling that we're doing. And so we're looking to help map that and really help aid us and save us some money from an exploration standpoint as we advance the Descendant discovery and other discoveries of the property.
So was the announcement today that you've done the survey, or that you've reinterpreted the results from the survey and you've got your better vectoring?
So we did 1 kilometer line over the Pine Bay deposit as a test.
Yeah.
And then we got that data back, and it was a nice fit. It very nicely fit the deposit as well as the horizon. Yeah. And that the horizon is confirmed by drilling.
Yeah.
So what we've done now is we're going back and expanding that survey line to 3 kilometers. So your ability to see deeper is much more clear. And then we're expanding it on other areas of the property now. So it was a test case to say, hey, can we do it? Is it going to work? Is it going to fit?
Now you're going to roll it out.
Now we're rolling it out in the other areas. And I think that is going to, forward-looking statement, but I have strong conviction that this is going to help us significantly as we look to unlock value through these discoveries moving forward.
And currently the share price, it's a third of what it was a year ago, or within a year, more or less. And you've said a couple of times, once before the call, before the interview, and once I think on the interview, that you're expecting kind of a re-rate and a kind of a higher share price in the future. Do you have kind of catalysts in mind that will do that, or is it just a kind of a turn in the market that you think is going to be responsible?
Well, at the end of the day, I think you could have any catalyst in the world, and if it's a bad market, it's a lot of times it's seen as an exiting or a liquidity event, right? So I definitely think we have the survey data. I mean, we've had some very strong moves from an equity price environment on survey results on the property, because the difference between, I understand the drill hole. I mean, there's the results.
Yeah.
But a picture's worth 1,000 words. And I think that, we can explain and talk about our exploration thesis and what our expectations are, but being able to show a picture that supports that thesis along with the other data points because, when we hit rainbow, for example, we hit rainbow at 900 meters vertical depth.
Yeah.
We had 2 or 3 holes. People couldn't see that. But people could certainly start seeing rainbow emerge the more drilling that we had into it, right? And so, again, I think the MT survey can be a big aid to that. It can really help re-rate us in many ways. We're also working on some other opportunities that I'm not really at the liberty to discuss right now, but I'm sure we'll have them in future discoveries.
Other prospects within the area or other tools that you'd be working on?
We're very focused, so it'll definitely be things related around our operation at Pine Bay.
Yeah.
And so if those things come and fold, obviously more the merrier.
Kind of more targets, more exploration targets is what you're referring to.
We could discuss that in further.
Okay.
I think there's corporate and development objectives that can be worked out,
right.
Things that could really valuable in other ways than strictly exploration, and even value us for the future exploration of the company. I think there's always opportunities to grow, and we'll execute on that and make that move when it makes sense for us. And beyond that, I do think that we are at a real key tipping point. I think the breakout that we saw today in gold price was key. I actually, quite frankly, I thought we were going to get in late January, February, but it based out longer. But when you have these moves in gold, these moves happen very quickly, and it's kind of like you look back going, "Man, did I miss the move? How did I miss the move? I've been waiting for the move."
It was obvious.
You weren't positioned for the move, right?
You got to position because you got to get positioned beforehand because you'll never know when it's.
It's a psychological type of environment. You can talk about humans emotionally abusing you, but the market can abuse you mentally and wear you down, right? And you can just completely get worn down to where you get to this negative state. And I'll tell you, with your mind, you can make yourself sick. So you can go to this conference and people are really down. It's just you get so negative that you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so it's always about putting things in context. And I definitely see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, I see a few people beaten up, but actually I do detect kind of an undercurrent, kind of a bubbling of excitement. I guess it helps when the gold price pops.
Yeah. Well, when my signal is, so for example, when zinc prices bottomed out, I was with my father on vacation, and Is
this 2015 or 2016?
16.
Yeah.
I think the time flies. And I was outside of these temples in Kyoto, and I look at my phone, because I'm always on my phone, and there's a Bloomberg article that Glencore could go bankrupt. And I was like, there's no shot in hell Glencore's going bankrupt, That just means that this is the bottom of the zinc cycle. And in there, boom, zinc ran to $1.60.
Yeah.
Just literally right after that.
April 2015, I think it was.
Yeah, and so when you see that sentiment, you're near the bottom or at the bottom. And I've had people that are so optimistic become so negative. And I said to them, the very fact that you're so negative and you don't see a way out means this has got to be the bottom.
In the meetings you've had on Callinex today, you've had 8 and 9 meetings already today on Callinex.
Yeah, they're like setup meetings and obviously ad hoc conversations.
And how's that? What's the message you're getting from your investors or potential investors?
I think there's optimism, certainly. The real smart money sees the intrinsic value in what we have and the asset base that we have.
Yeah.
We've had significant people, organizations that anybody would be honored to have. You can pay attention, take a meeting from them that you've asked now to come site and visit us. And so there's a lot of people that understand, the market is the market, but the asset is the asset.
And so industry is taking note of the asset, basically, is what I'm hearing.
Industry is taking note of the asset, and it continues to take note of the asset. And I think really 2024 is the year that Pine Bay grows into a Tier 1 asset.
Yeah.
Right? And the one thing that has been missing, really, I think, check that Tier 1 asset box, is going to be scale and volume. And that is something that, can change very quickly, particularly when you're looking at the widths that we're hitting on Descendant, right? We feel that we're at the top of that system. But when you're looking at Rainbow at 8 meters average thickness on that deposit, and you're looking at the widths that we're hitting.
I remember you've already published some intersections. Kind of just remind me.
There were real wide intervals. I mean, we hit 4 lenses on that initial discovery hole over 60 meters. There's 4 different wide massive sulfide lenses. And the metal distribution was indicative of you being distal on a system, right? So there's a lot of things that we look at as people that are really experts in terms of our team on these type of deposit styles and where we sit within a bigger system. But you take those grades and that metal distribution and you move it over to Rainbow, you're at the top of Rainbow. You're distal on Rainbow, and when you go at depth, your grades dramatically improve. So, moving forward, I do believe that our resource base can grow, double, triple very quickly based upon those widths. Because again, your tons per vertical meter just rockets when you're getting really wide intervals.
So let's leave any kind of corporate conversation aside. And if you could just kind of summarize what you're aiming to deliver in the next 3 to 6 months from the technical basis, what's the exploration news flow and the de-risking news flow going to look like for the next few months?
Certainly. So, it's going to be on the surveys that we're doing right now over these key areas of the deposit area. I think will paint and show the picture, potentially. We have to do the survey to get the results and see that. But I think it's done a great job mapping the structure, and the structure is very key in terms of where to go and where you can get the fold ends, particularly on the Descendant discovery. And then it's going to be drilling, ultimately, that will really provide even further value creation to validate that.
Will you be drilling in the next 6 months?
Yeah, most certainly, yeah. We can turn a rig 4 or 5 days after you need to turn a rig. We've got 2 rigs sitting on site, so there's not a need to go look for a rig or where is the rig. And the rigs are there.
So you'll use those rigs once you've got the new survey data from the MT survey.
Yeah, I think that when you're managing risk, and that's also we're managing a very high risk environment, it's exploration. You want to do everything you can to reduce that risk. That's why we start out in a known jurisdiction, a district where you have all these check boxes that I don't need to worry about where am I going to get power. I don't know where am I going to get water. Where are the people going to come from? Those type of things. And from an exploration standpoint, the geochemical data is we're processing that from the deepest holes there. And moving forward, you don't want to get to work without having your full data set and being able to evaluate it and how that be a part of your decision-making process.
Max, pleasure talking to you. Good luck with the exploration and all the conversations that PDAC entails in the months ahead.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me.